Bishop Iker.
Thank you.
First question I'd like to ask you, Bonnie Anderson, the President of the House of Deputies, sent you, or sent to the panel of reference, a letter objecting to their advice or to their suggestion with regard to the Diocese of Fort Worth's position on women's ordination. She, in that letter, characterized the history of the women's ordination debate and discussion in the Episcopal Church. What would you say about the way she characterized that history?
She's trying to falsify what actually took place at the General Convention that permitted the ordination of women to the priesthood. I think anybody who was there would tell you that it would never have passed if it had been understood as mandatory. And it is abundantly clear because of several things that happened after that General Convention, including a meeting of the House of Bishops that passed a conscience statement, the formation of the Evangelical Catholic Mission, which decided they could remain within the Church with permissive ordination of women in the priesthood, and a succession of bishops were elected after that time who made it known they were opposed to the ordination of women in the priesthood. They had no problem getting consent and being consecrated. So she's trying to rewrite history, and she can't get away with that. It's clear that the reason there was the need to amend the canons in 1997 is because it had been a permissive practice up until that time. In 97 it became mandatory, and that became a kind of a death sentence to people who hold the theological position that up until that time was permitted, because it's an effort to legislate out of existence bishops who hold the historic view of the involvement of the priesthood. The other thing that struck me about Bonnie's letter is that she gives this impression that there's this huge misunderstanding and misconceptions that the panel of reference, those poor foreigners that they are, do not understand the enlightened polity of the Episcopal Church, that we have a General Convention, and that bishops can't just decide things. You have to have the House of Deputies decide things too. And at no place in the panel's report or recommendations is there a misconception about that or misinterpretation. After all, Bishop Claude Payne is a member of the panel of reference, highly respected retired bishop of Texas. He knows the history on the ordination of women canons, and he knows how the General Convention works, and he wasn't about to let something slip through by way of misunderstanding. I had conversations with members of the panel of reference about how General Convention works, as did the presiding bishop, Frank Griswold at that time, and the submission in response to our appeal from the Episcopal Church was written by David Booth Beers. He didn't let them get away with misunderstandings about our polity. The beef is Bonnie doesn't want to accept the mind of the Anglican Communion is that we are in a process of reception, an open process of reception that's been reaffirmed by the Communion again and again at the highest levels, Lambeth conferences successively, and now reaffirmed by the panel of reference. And she just doesn't want to buy that. She says it's settled, and I guess because she thinks it's settled, it is. But in the mind of the Anglican Communion, it's a long spiritual process that may take several generations in order for the Church to come to a mind.
Thank you. We also learned today that Bishop McPherson has been named as second, representative from the dissenting voices in the Episcopal Church.
Dissenting voices?
Dissenting
from what?
Well, dissenting from perhaps the
General Convention religion.
More heretical decisions of the
the assenting bishops to the Windsor.
I'll definitely take that correction, yes, sir. I was wondering what your hopes might be for the meeting that is going to precede, I think, the general primates meeting between the three American bishops there and then the Archbishop of Canterbury.
Well, I think we can't get caught up into playing games about whether this is part of the primates meeting or not, preceding it, the pre-meetings. It's part of the primates meeting. And in addition to the primates of the Communion, invitations have gone to two other bishops from Acusa because of the clouded relationship now that the Episcopal Church has with the rest of the Communion. due to our non-compliance with the Windsor Report at the last General Convention, which was underscored by the election of a non-Windsor compliant presiding bishop. So it's good news that Bob Duncan has been asked to come there. I think everyone expected that because he's been out front more than any other bishop on the Orthodox side of these questions. I applaud the fact that Bishop McPherson's been chosen to go. That's a wise decision. I think he'll do well representing those of us who want to comply with the Windsor Report. The curious thing about this, of course, is he's probably the most conservative of the provincial presidents that make up the presiding bishop's council of advice, and he was chosen, as you know, a couple of months ago as president of the council of advice. So he's in a very difficult position of being someone who obviously stands at a different end of things than Catherine Shorey does, and yet is the head of her council of advice.
After Tanzania, whatever occurs, I think a lot of speculation is circling around what sort of new structure, or what sort of structure, replacement structure, whatever new thing comes out of Tanzania, that the Orthodox side of the church has had in the past some difficulty between Anglo-Catholics and evangelicals and charismatics and all the various flavors of Anglican there are. And I was wondering what your hope is for maybe the shape of a new structure and how all the various streams.
Well, those differences you talk about are pale by comparison with the kind of things that divide us today. Would that we were divided over the use of incense and Eucharistic vestments and whether you call the priest father or not. The life of the communion after Tanzania is what is at stake. Will there be a unified Anglican communion beyond Tanzania? Or will there be a decision that what has taken place has in fact already been the indication that the Episcopal Church has decided to walk apart from the communion? I think there were signs at our last General Convention that we're prepared to do that by the renaming of the Episcopal Church with all the flags of the various nations that make up churches related to us. Kind of giving the indication that already there's a hint that there are two Anglican communions, one which is historic, biblical, Orthodox, and Windsor compliant, and the other which is experimental, autonomous, independent, going its own way. It's a new day and we're making it up as we go along, accommodating our faith and practice to a changing society and culture.